Welcome back to AI for the Humanities. I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware. If you're new here, this channel is your go to resource for exploring how generative AI intersects with humanities education. We cover everything from the latest large language models, or LLMs, to tools for classroom use, academic writing support, creative projects, and critical ethical questions. Our goal is to empower educators and students in the humanities to engage with these technologies thoughtfully, creatively, and critically. In today's episode, I'm excited to introduce one of our exceptional undergraduate interns, Riley Bell, a junior here at UD, majoring in three languages, English and linguistics. Riley has been researching and experimenting with Claude Sonnet 3.7, the latest model from Anthropic. Claude is a conversational AI tool designed with a unique emphasis on reasoning, helpfulness, and user safety. It's part of Anthropic's mission as a public benefit corporation, which means they strive to develop AI that is both effective and ethically grounded. Riley will walk you through Claude's interface, its capabilities, like generating syntax trees, analyzing documents, and even chatting in multiple languages, and how it compares to other tools like ChatGPT. But beyond just the tech specs, this episode asks an important question. What role should AI play in the humanities? Riley shares some thoughtful use cases and concerns, especially around academic integrity, language learning, and writing instruction. Let's dive into this demo and see how Claude 3.7 can be used in humanities contexts and what we should be mindful of along the way.
Hello, my name is Riley Bell. I am currently a junior here at the University of Delaware studying a double major in English and three foreign languages, which in my case are Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. I also have minors in linguistics and Asian studies with Chinese language, and this spring 2025 I am working for Professor McInnes Dominguez as an intern researching for AI for the humanities. The AI tool that I have been tasked with researching this semester is Claude, or the family of tools that kind of all fall under the umbrella term of Claude, which are developed by the company Anthropic. AI for the Humanities researches the implementations, the usage, and the ethics of generative AI in context with the humanities as a field of study and in humanities professions. So one of the first things that I noticed about Claude as I started researching it was the unique take that Anthropic has on developing the AI and on the goals that they have for how their consumers or how their users interact with Claude, what it means to be an assistant, even though Claude is a generative chatbot and it's a large language model AI tool. So I want to start off this demonstration of Claude, an introduction to Claude, with a couple of the ethical considerations that Anthropic pushes in their press releases and in their implementation of the user interface. So I'm going to switch over into my webcam and tab view. These screenshots are taken directly from Claude's interface a couple weeks ago when I first got the tool and started to research. So as we can see here, Claude is already marketed as an assistant that has a kind of interactive front saying, "Hello, I'm Claude," giving it more of a personality, we'll say. And Anthropic includes very, very clearly their usage policy, disclaimers about reviewing conversations. They have an automatic abuse detection system implemented into the tool, and also disclaimers about the quality of information coming from Claude. AI is still very much across the board experimental. It's a very, very new and quickly developing technology. So Anthropic has those disclaimers in, for their own protections, but also because they want to make sure that their users are aware of that and to not depend fully on AI. And all of these disclaimers are available throughout their information website, also from Claude's interface itself. But when you sign up and set up an account with Claude, it's done and presented to you that way as well. So this article that I'm referencing is an article from Anthropic about the character of an AI tool, because character isn't something that every company necessarily focuses on, but it's something that Anthropic takes into consideration, and they actually have developers on their team working to tweak and correct and kind of adjust the levels of character and consideration that Claude has in its responses to people. So when they say character, they mean when we have Claude respond to a prompt or generate content for somebody or answer a question, how do we want that information to be presented? They're very precise about the language that they use. And the company has also said, knowing that they have many different people around the world of different linguistic backgrounds, of different cultural and religious backgrounds, all using the tool, they want to make sure that the presentation of content that Claude gives and the interaction experience that every user has with Claude is kind of on equal footing and is very passive and considerate of people from all backgrounds. A researcher, O'Leary, did a database review of Claude and AI safety and noted also that Anthropic, the company who is the AI firm that's developing Claude, is a public benefit corporation, which means that when Anthropic is going about their endeavors, they're putting out press releases and taking feedback from the public, they are obligated to balance their profit as well as the experience the users have and the benefit to the public that they're producing through this tool. So, two quotes directly from this article, and from the article was a transcript of a podcast with Claude Anthropic employees, have said, as in AI tools, become more capable, we believe that we can and should try to train them to behave well in a richer sense, such that when AI tools are working with people and taking prompts from people, they can discern whether or not some tasks they shouldn't do or maybe should do because it may or may not be harmful, and how to respond instead. So, as I mentioned before, Claude has a framework for abuse detection, which is automatic, in addition to the reports that people can make when they're using the tool. So, avoiding harm and taking into consideration, the ethical implications of having such a powerful AI tool are already on the agenda that Anthropic has for its team. And as I said before, Claude interacts with people from many countries and walks of life, and Anthropic wants to develop Claude in such a way that it can navigate these things gracefully. So, that's kind of my first spiel for the ethical considerations, because we haven't even gotten into the ethics from the humanities side as researchers, but Anthropic as a company is already putting a focus on the ethics and the ethical implementation of their tool. All right, I'd like to move now into a demo of Claude itself and Claude's interface. As I mentioned before, Claude's designers and developers really developed this with a lot of UX in mind, thinking how can we make this look most presentable to our users. We have a pretty sleek and professional looking chat box here. On the side are my recent chats, things I've been asking about, things I've been, looking to Claude kind of for my own personal needs, but also as I've been researching. There's a list of all the chats that you have where you can view their information, select multiple, delete, the whole shebang. So Claude being a chat-based LLM, you interface with it using plain, simple English as you would for any other chatbot assistant. And we can see here that I'm currently using Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is the most recent and up-to-date model. So the cutoff of the knowledge for Claude in this iteration is from October of 2024. Haiku is a smaller model that's also available with the basic plan that you do not pay for. And Claude also has implemented different thinking modes. I've been using normal because that's good enough for my purposes and also for the purposes of research. But extended thinking mode, which they recently implemented, just gives Claude, or it gives the system rather, I don't want to refer to it as a person quite yet, or as if it were a person. It gives the system more time to think about its response and to process things, kind of like breaking it down, which follows the model of deduction. But it's good for math and for coding challenges where you really just want the chatbot to think about its responses more. Old models are also available, but I don't see a reason to use those other than for research. So, using Claude in its current iteration, I may ask it something such as, what does it mean to be an LLM? Like you are. Asking of the assistant. So here we can see Claude. This little thing represents Claude, and we can see it being written out. Claude's responses, in addition to being kind of impartial and informative as well as with a gentle character, as we mentioned earlier, are very, very explanatory. So these responses tend to be structured like this, where they have an introduction, a couple of key points, and then um, a closing statement or conclusion. And if there's room for it, or if Claude deems that um, there's more to be explored or more to be discussed, sometimes it'll also end the conclusion here with a kind of open-ended question, or would you like to know more about this? Or if you'd like to know more about this particular thing, ask me about this. So Claude is really, really designed for being educational and informative. The demos of, there are truly so many different applications that I want to look at here, but the demos that I'm going to start with are using Claude for linguistic purposes, but then also for document parsing and kind of text and language analysis. So I'm going to ask Claude first, and this comes from my interest in Spanish linguistics and background as a Spanish student. I may ask Claude, please write a transcription of the Spanish sentence, mi mamá me dijo que limpiara, in the International Phonetic Alphabet. The sentence meaning my mom told me or asked me to clean my room. So Claude says here's the transcription, gives you the full thing listed out, and then as I mentioned before, lots of bullet points and explanatory kind of responses come from Claude. So being a linguistics student, I wanted to use this as an example to show one of the many, many different things that Claude is knowledgeable about and can do in a text-based environment. And one of the features that I really do like about Claude is that when it gives you work, it explains it and kind of goes through those steps. So it's presented as, well, I don't really quite want to just give someone the answer in an educational context even. And for educational purposes, this is really, really helpful and actually kind of goes above and beyond what I've seen from other chatbots in its explanation. Being a linguistics student, though, I do know that this is not perfect in terms of the standards and the conventions that we use in Spanish IPA and when we are doing Spanish phonetics and phonology. So a couple of phonological changes were carried through by Claude, but maybe we want it to be a little bit more specific. And this is where we bring in prompt engineering. Prompt engineering refers to the art, I guess you could call it, of phrasing your prompts that you give these chatbots a little bit differently or a little bit more specifically to kind of reach the desired output that you're looking for. So I might say, great transcription. Please redo it using periods for syllabic markers between every syllable and keep in mind Spanish resyllabification rules. And then we have mi mamá me dijo que limpiara el cuarto. And this is a pretty solid transcription and one that I would agree with. So, que limpiara, yes, perfect. So, just one example here for linguistics, we can see, you take something as niche as, okay, I want to do an IPA transcription. I want to do it in Spanish. Can Claude do that? And yes, very, very vast knowledge base and a lot of power with text-based functions. Something else that Claude can do, which I've explored through the, not phonetics, but linguistic applications, as well as coding and website building, is Claude has its kind of own, it has its own GUI, its own interface for viewing the output of code that Claude itself can write. For example, I might take that same sentence, which is in Claude's recent memory. So I might say, take that same sentence and draw a syntax tree for it. So when Claude generates content like this, we can see it, again, coding and putting this out in real time. Again, there'll be an explanation of each kind of step that it goes through, which in this case, if you are a linguistics student, or if you are using this in any other practical application and want to think, I want to see this sentence broken down. We have the sentence, noun phrase, verb phrase, all of these things that are, niche knowledge to linguistics and to, in this case, syntax. And then it's broken down, and Claude will show you a preview either of the code and the way that it built its own graphs versus what that actually looks like in a presentable format to the user. So either for linguistics in this sense, or even if you want to use Claude to say, practice chatting in Spanish with me, practice chatting in German with me, any language that you wanted to do, the really big strength of a chatbot like this that has a vast collection of knowledge and can parse sentences and work in a kind of text-based way is that aside from obviously having a chatting partner, maybe if you are busy and want to get in some practice but you can't make it to office hours, or if you just kind of want to practice on your own time, it can come up with somewhat novel language. But in cases like this, when you want a syntax explanation or a phonetics explanation or something of that sort, because Claude, in this case, understands the basic premises behind those rules, it can take these novel sentences and then apply those rules to it and produce that kind of novel output. So this isn't to say that this exact sentence exists online somewhere broken down into a syntax tree, but Claude was able to take your input or my input, take those rules and apply it to it, and then use that in a constructive way. So in this way, when we're looking at languages and linguistics, there is a lot of educational application for students that want to practice or check their own work or get a little bit more of an in-depth explanation on something that may not be elsewhere online already, because the chatbot has the capability to work with the rules and work with the knowledge and kind of come up with something new with you, which I think is really, really cool. The other implementation that I want to look at, because Claude is text-based, is parsing documents. So we can see here, Claude has a number of file input methods. There's also a function to organize projects so that Claude has like a frame or like a framework to have contextual knowledge about multiple documents kind of in the same place to keep yourself organized, which I have not delved into and I'd like to research in the future. But for document analysis in general, we can upload files either manually, take a picture, which I'm not going to do because that's not the demonstration I'd like to do, or connect to Google Drive. So I have, just in a separate tab here, a cover letter, for example, and I'm going to not upload it, but just drag it onto the screen, which I don't know if you can quite see with this demo and the screen recording, but if you have another window up, you can just drag it onto the screen. And I'm going to say, could you please, this is a personal cover letter, could you please grade this cover letter and give me feedback for where to improve? It is an application for a governmental office. So Claude, now working with it, will take its time to think, presents it all in a great format, and this is my cover letter for Maryland Senator Van Hollen's office. So in the terms of parsing, Claude can go through images, it can go through PDFs, Word documents, a number of different formats, or just plain text, although if you do paste plain text, there is a limit for how much you can put in, so you do want to be careful there, and files are generally a better way to go. And I simply asked, grade the cover letter and give feedback for improvements. So Claude, in this kind of general structure, broke it down into strengths, areas for improvement, broken down into enumerated this way, here, here, here. B+ for this cover letter, cool. And like I said before, sometimes Claude will say, we'll finish off finish off a response with another question. So in this case, would you like more specific suggestions for any of these improvement areas? Sure, maybe I do. In the future, if I was looking at this and wanted to revise it, I might ask that. But this is a great way to get a separate pair of eyes. For example, if you could go here at UD, go to the Writing Center, you could ask a professor to review something. If you are on a time crunch or you want to just be working with yourself, AI can also go through your writing structurally and give feedback in that kind of way. So between productive, kind of back and forth conversation about language, or in the case of parsing, feedback, document analysis for something like this, Claude is just a very, very powerful text-based tool. When we're looking at implications for the humanities ethically, I could say to Claude, could you rewrite that cover letter with the suggestions you gave? And Claude says, I'd be happy to rewrite your cover letter incorporating my suggestions. Here's an improved version. And it kind of, again, in that document format, pops off on the side. And here you can download it as a file, copy the contents, or publish it on Claude's website once it's done. So Claude here, when I asked it to grade, said, here are some feedbacks and strengths. But Claude is also open and responsive to a student, for example, saying, could you rewrite this for me? Which is, from an ethical perspective, a little bit worrying, just because we have general concerns about students not having originally produced work. And although Anthropic had mentioned that part of their character development for Claude would be to discern whether or not a certain request was harmful, because that was a big, starting part of their agenda. What this means for the humanities is that as a tool, Claude is very powerful. It has a lot of potential applications, but it is unrestrained, as are many AI technologies. And if Claude is to be implemented in a school setting, there just isn't, from my perspective as an academic and as a researcher, there isn't enough restraint on the capabilities that it has to ensure full academic honesty, if that makes sense, speaking about the ethical uses of AI. Because if we were to say, write a story or produce a piece of creative writing for a class, or if that were to be graded, in 10 out of 10 cases that would violate the academic honesty or academic integrity policy of most, if not all, universities. So while Claude is a fantastic and very powerful text-based assistant, it is not all-powerful. It does not have access to the internet. It's pretty much text-based, so even though it can produce those kinds of graphics and lines of data and code, it cannot produce images or videos in kind of the same way as other specialized AI tools can. But in terms of writing, feedback, structure, parsing, document analysis, it's a very powerful tool that has a lot of potential applications. And with regard to the ethics, it is at this point still up to students to hold themselves accountable and up to educators to properly explore these tools and then implement them in their own ways. And with that said, just as a very, very general usage, a broad usage lookage and takeaways again, Claude is a very powerful language model. It can process files, documents, and work with text. It cannot access the internet or any events past October 2024, except for like major events such as the events of the election, if Anthropic chooses, picks and chooses events to feed to it. However, at this point in time, guidelines and self-discipline from academic bodies are still required, or I would recommend guidelines and self-discipline from academic bodies and professors when trying to implement AI tools such as Claude into the classroom.
Thank you so much to Riley for that insightful and well-researched walkthrough of Claude Sonnet 3.7. As we saw, Claude offers powerful tools for linguistic analysis, writing support, and even real-time dialogue practice, but it also raises important considerations about how we use AI responsibly in academic spaces. Whether you're asking it to diagram a sentence or critique a cover letter, it's vital to remember that these tools are just that, tools. They can enhance our thinking and creativity, but they don't replace the human insight, nuance, and ethical responsibility that are central to humanities education. As educators, students, and lifelong learners, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to engage with these tools critically. What can they amplify? What can they obscure? How can they support our goals without compromising our values? These are the kinds of conversations we'll keep having here on AI for the Humanities. If you learned something today or have questions about Claude or other LLMs, be sure to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with colleagues or classmates who are curious about AI in the classroom. Until next time, I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, and this has been AI for the Humanities. See you in the next episode.
Typing into space and Claude replies with syntax trees and thoughtful AI eyes. 3 languages dance in my head. Claude breaks it down in code and thread. Claude in the cloud, soft-spoken and bright, helping me learn late into the night. Files and drive, a partner to read, not a mind but it plants the seed. Soft-spoken and bright, helping me learn late into the night. Files and drive, a partner to read, not a mind but it plants the seed. Analyzing text, it lends a hand, gives my rough drafts a place to land. But caution too, it's not a soul, just a model with a thoughtful goal. Don't forget your voice, don't let it fade. Use the tools, but don't let them invade. We're the ones who write the line. Claude just helps refine. Funnel. Claude in the cloud, not taking the stage, just turning the page on a brand new age. AI and me, side by side, on a humanities guided ride. Don't forget your voice, don't let it fade. Use the tools, but don't let them invade. We're the ones who write the line. Claude just helps refine. Claude in the cloud, not taking the stage, just turning the page on a brand new age. AI and me, side by side.